possibly be put on it. So they've just crashed and straight up like half the crew, not half the crew, a percentage of the crew actually just stayed on the boat, on the ship, because they thought that they were gonna fucking die. So they're like, we're not even gonna fucking take the lifeboats out to land. Like, we're gonna drink all the booze on the ship. We're gonna raid the captain's drawers. We're gonna wear the fancy clothes that we've never been allowed to wear before. We're just gonna have a fucking rager. And that's exactly what they did. And then eventually they did get rescued a few days later, and then Captain Cheap, he's ill and injured, but he's still their captain, and he was like, "You're disgraceful. I'm still your captain, you motherfuckers." So anyways, they're stranded on this island now. And they've lost, obviously. They got stranded during a time where they got disconnected from the fleet. So nobody knows where they are. Okay. Chapter
Jeez
9, The
Louise.
Beast. Byron was hungry. Byron is, his name is John Byron. He's 16 years old, and he's like a rich, like aristocrat kid that wanted adventure and thought that he would find it, but like I think he's probably discovered that it's not really all it's cracked up to be in his whatever. Maybe he loves it. Who fucking knows? I don't know. Anyways, he's a kid. John Byron is like a teenager. Byron was hungry. In the few days since he and his companions had been cast on the island, they had come across virtually nothing to eat. Quote, we had, and the quotes are just from diary entries. So, like, it's very detailed what the author has gleaned from all of these diary entries. It paints a very vivid picture. We had most of us fasted 48 hours, Byron wrote, and some even longer than that. They had yet to spot a single animal on land to hunt, not even a rat. More surprisingly, perhaps because of the tremendous breakers, the waters near the shore seemed empty of fish. The very sea, Byron wrote, is found to be almost as barren as the land. Finally, somebody shot a seagull, and Captain Cheap ordered that it be divvied among the group. The men assembled branches and struck together pieces of flint and metal from a tinderbox, struggling to ignite the damp wood. Also, it's been raining, so not great for fire situation. At last a flame crackled upward, and the smoke twisting in the wind. The old cook, Thomas McLean, skinned the bird and boiled it in a large pot, sprinkling in some of their flour to make a thick soup.
Wow.
The steaming portions were doled out like sacred offerings in the few wooden bowls they had salvaged. Byron relished his share, yet moments later he and his companions were all, as Byron put it, seized with the most painful sickness at our stomachs and violent retchings. The flour had been contaminated. The men were now even more depleted than before, and they were discovering that the climate was marked by almost incessant tempests. A British captain who passed by the island nearly a century later noted how the fierce squalls beat down from the ever-present clouds that engulfed the surrounding lonely heights and called it a place where the soul of man dies in him. As hungry as Byron and his companions were, they were afraid to wander far, their fears heightened by their deep-seated prejudices. Quote, being strongly possessed that the savages were retired but some little distance from us, and waited to see us divided, our parties did not make any great excursions, end quote. And he's talking about, they haven't seen the natives, and he's calling them savages, but the only reason they're thinking that there's a civilization out there is because they found a constructed hut in, like, not far off from the beach, inland, in the forest, which is creepy as fuck, by the way. Can you imagine?
Yeah, being like the first
Like,
explorers
oh my
out there.
god, fucking savages.
Yeah.
The fucking, are they friendly, or are they, you know, will they literally hack and slash us apart?
Yeah.
That's terrifying.
That
Horrifying.
is scary.
So the men assembled branches and struck. Oh wait, hold on. Okay, fire. Okay. The castaways mostly stayed along the shore, which was cordoned off by the sodden grasslands and by the steep hills covered in dense, gnarly woods. Looming to the southwest was a small mountain, and to the north and east there were more daunting peaks, including one that rose about 2,000 feet, with a flat top and vapors rising from it like a smoky volcano. The men scavenged the beach for mussels and snails. Refuse from the wreck had begun to wash ashore chunks of the deck, the stump of the mainmast, a chain pump, a gun carriage, and a bell. Byron picked through the litter, looking for anything useful. Several corpses had been disgorged from the wreck, and he recoiled at these hideous spectacles. But lying among them, he discovered, was something that suddenly seemed more valuable than the galleon itself, a wooden cask filled with salted beef. On May 17th, 3 days after the wreck, the gunner, John Bulkeley, we like John so far. I personally like this guy. He seems pretty reliable and no nonsense and pretty sensible. One of the more sensible ones on the crew. He's a gunner. He's a gun. He's a gunner.
He's a gunner.
Scraps of meat. In his journal, he noted that it would soon be the Pentecost, the seventh Sunday after Easter, when Christians commemorate the moment that the Holy Spirit appeared during a harvest feast. As the scripture puts it, on that day, whoever calls on the name of the Lord shall be saved. Like the majority of the castaways, Bulkeley had no shelter. He was eating, sleeping, and squatting outside. Quote, "It rained so hard that it had almost cost us our lives," he wrote. Byron, meanwhile, fretted that it would be impossible for us to subsist much longer without shelter. The temperature hovered around freezing, and the blistering ocean winds and the constant dampness made it the kind of cold that got under one's clothing, turning lips blue and causing teeth to chatter, the kind of cold that killed. Bulkeley had an idea. He enlisted Cummins and several of the stoutest seamen to help him drag the cutter up the shore, flip it over, and prop it up with the keel pointing upwards. The goal, Bulkeley wrote, was to contrive something like a house. He and his friends crowded into the dry sanctuary. Spotting Byron wandering aimlessly about, Bulkeley welcomed him in. As the gunner gathered the men together, assisting them, they were grateful. He had made a fire, that spark of civilization, and they huddled around the flames trying to warm themselves. Byron in his journal described removing his wet clothing, wringing it out, and beating it free of lice, then putting everything back on. The men pondered their situation. Though Cheap had punished the renegades, they remained a source of turbulence, especially Mitchell. When they're talking about the renegades, they're talking about the stupid idiots that stayed on the ship, got super fucking drunk, and then came back a couple days later. And throughout the company, Bulkeley heard growing murmurings and discontent about the captain. They blamed him for their misery and wondered what he was doing to rescue them. Without Commodore Anson to guide them, he was the old captain. Bulkeley wrote, things began to have a new face. There was a general disorder and confusion among the people, who were now no longer implicitly obedient. In the British Navy, volunteer and pressed seamen stopped being paid after their ship was decommissioned, and as two of the castaways argued, the loss of the wager meant that, for most of them, their earnings had likely ceased. They were suffering for nothing. Weren't they therefore entitled to be their own masters and no longer subjected to command? Bulkeley in his journal recorded some of the complaints about sheep. If only the captain had conferred with his officers at sea, he wrote, we might probably have escaped our present unhappy condition. Yet Bulkeley was careful not to openly side with the agitators, noting that he'd always acted in obedience to command. Many of the disaffected still gravitated toward him. He'd proven his abilities on the voyage. Had he not beseeched the captain to turn around? And he now seemed to be the hardiest among them. He had even provided them shelter. In his journal, Bulkeley jotted a line from the poet John Dryden. Presence of mind and courage in distress are more than armies to procure success. Bulkeley knew that none of them would survive much longer without additional sources of food. He tried to pinpoint the party's location by mapping the stars and dead reckoning. He figured that they were stranded off the Chilean coast of Patagonia at around 47 degrees south and 40 degrees west. But he had no sense of the island. Was the rest of it as inimical to human life? Given that mountains obscured what lay to the east, some of the castaways wondered if they might actually be on the mainland. This was far-fetched, but that it was a question at all underscored that they were as starved for knowledge as they were for food. They required both if Bulkeley was ever to find a way back to his wife and 5 children. The storm momentarily waned, and Bulkeley glimpsed the alien sun. Loading his musket, he set out with a party to explore. Byron went with another armed group, insisting that they had no choice but to determine if there was any food beyond the shoreline. The ground was boggy, and their feet sank as they slogged through the grasslands and up the wooded hillsides. They scrambled around decaying trunks that had been uprooted by the winds, and the trees, both living and dead, were so densely packed together that it was like marching through hedges. Roots and creepers entangled the men's limbs. Thorns tore their skin.
Wait, creepers like Minecraft? Sorry, gamer thought.
No!
Sorry, bit of a gamer thought there.
Like centipedes and like bugs.
Aren't creepers like? I thought creepers were like spiky vines.
Could be. Let's look it up. Hold on. Any plant that grows along the ground, around another plant, or up a wall by means of extending stems or branches.
There you go.
Or any of a number of small birds that creep around in trees or vegetation. Or a New Zealand songbird.
Wow. That sounds
Or
beautiful.
a low-wheeled platform on which a mechanic lies while working on the underside of a motor vehicle. Okay, anyway. Okay, so a creeper is not a bug. It's actually vines that grow on the ground around other plants. Okay. Byron, making a passage with bare hands, soon became exhausted, though he still marveled at the unusual plant life. The wood here, he wrote, is chiefly of the aromatic kind, the iron wood, a wood of a very deep red hue, and another of an exceeding bright yellow. He did not see many birds inland. There were some woodcocks and hummingbirds, some thorn-tailed rayaditos, and what he described as a large kind of robin red-breasted, which was a long-tailed meadowlark. Besides seabirds and vultures, he lamented these appeared to be the only feathered inhabitants. The British captain, who surveyed the island nearly a century later, wrote, as if to complete the dreariness and utter desolation of the scene, even the birds seemed to shun its neighborhood. Once, when Byron was apart from his companions, he spotted a vulture sitting atop a hill, its head bald and obscene. Byron crept toward it, trying not to make a sound, to rustle the leaves or crack the brambles underfoot. He was aiming his musket when he suddenly heard a loud growling nearby, and then again a totally unfamiliar sound. He bolted. The woods were so gloomy I could see nothing, he noted, but as I retired, this noise followed me close. Clutching his musket, he stumbled through the clawing branches until he reached the rest of his party. Some of the men claimed that they had not only heard the growling, but had glimpsed a very large beast. Perhaps it was merely a figment of their imaginations, as their minds, like their bodies, unraveled from hunger. Or perhaps, as Byron and many of the seamen now believed, a beast was out there stalking them. Oh shit.
Oh my
This is literally
gosh.
like Lost. Lost smoke monster. Anyway,
This is like Lost.
just like Lost.
You're right.
Except it's a beast, not a weird smoke monster. Okay. After a while, the castaways gave up trying to cross the island. It was too impenetrable. The only nourishment they had gathered was a couple of woodcocks, which they'd shot, and some wild celery. As for food, this island
Woodcock.
produces none,
Sorry.
bulk-like included. Byron thought that the environment was scarce to be paralleled in any part of the globe, and that it affords neither fruit, grain, nor even roots for the sustenance of man. Byron and a few companions climbed the small mountain overlooking their encampment, hoping to at least get a better sense of where they were situated. The mountain was so steep that they had to cut steps into its side. When Byron reached the summit, breathing in the thin air, the view was breathtaking. There was no doubt that they were on an island. It extended about 2 miles from the southwest to northeast, and nearly 4 miles from the southeast to the northwest, where the encampment had been set up. In every direction, Byron looked. The wilderness spanned into more wilderness, remote, impassable, and chillingly beautiful. To the south he saw another seemingly desolate island, and to the east, in the far distance, he could make out a series of ice-bound peaks, the Andes on the mainland. Surveying the island where the wager had run aground, he noticed that it was battered on all sides by a wild frothing sea. A scene, as he put it, of such dismal breakers as would discourage the most daring from making attempts in small boats. There seemed to be no escape. Bam. Chapter 10. Our New Town. Captain David Cheap emerged from the native dwelling carrying a pistol. The men continued to look at him doubtfully, as if they had found out some secret about him. After less than a week on the island, he was in danger of losing their trust as they realized the full extent of their predicament. Not only were the 3 boats unable to weather a long journey, they were too small to carry most of the castaways. And even if they located tools and materials to build a larger vessel, it would take them months to complete the task. They were stuck here for the foreseeable future, with winter approaching, and they were already showing signs of physical and psychological deterioration. Cheap knew that unity was paramount to their survival, intuiting a principle that science would later demonstrate. In 1945, in one of the most comprehensive modern studies of human deprivation, known as the Minnesota Starvation Experiment, scientists assessed the
Of
effects
course,
of
that's a
hunger
thing.
on a group of individuals. During a 6-month period, 36 male volunteers, all were single, fit pacifists who had shown an ability to get along with others, had their calorie intake cut in half. The men lost their strength and stamina, each shedding roughly a quarter of his body weight, and they became irritable, depressed, and unable to concentrate. Many of the volunteers had hoped that self-abnegation would lead them, like monks, to a deeper spirituality. But instead, they began conniving, stealing food, and coming to blows. How many people have I hurt with my indifference, my grouchiness, my overbearing perversion for food? One subject wrote. Another subject shouted, I'm going to kill myself, then turned on one of the scientists and said, I'm going to kill you. This person also fantasized about cannibalism and had to be removed from the experiment. A report summarizing
What the fuck? I've never heard of this. This is crazy.
I mean, my shit's been cut in half, but like I've experienced no hunger, so I guess I don't count. Shit.
You count, Tara.
I can't. No, I don't count because these people actually felt hunger, whereas I do not.
You count
Right?
my eyes.
Yeah, with gastroparesis. Don't feel hunger. Think that's very sweet, but like scientifically speaking, it wouldn't be a good like it wouldn't even fucking count. Anyways, that's neither here nor there. Um, the cannibal. Oh my god. A report summarizing the results of the study noted that the volunteers were shocked at how thin their moral and social veneers seemed to be. The castaways on Wager Island. I love that he's calling it Wager Island. That's fucking great. Already depleted from the voyage, were receiving far less caloric intake than those in the experiment did. And they were under far greater distress. Nothing about their environment was controlled. Captain Sheep, ill and hobbling, had to cope with his own torments, yet he domineered. He hated consulting with other officers, and there was no time to waste. And he began to forge a plan to carve out an outpost in this wilderness, planting the seed of the British Empire. To prevent them from falling into a Hobbesian state with every man against every man, Cheap believed the castaways needed binding rules and rigid structures, and their commander. Cheap summoned everyone and reviewed the Articles of War, reminding them that the rules still applied on land, particularly those prohibiting any mutinous assemblies, practices, designs on pain of death. The men all needed to pull together, each fulfilling his designated tasks with steadiness and courage. They were still part of that human machinery, moving with precision to the captain's will. Given the potential threats on the island and the lack of food, Chief decided that his men must salvage the wreckage of the Wager, where a few segments of the quarterdeck and forecastle were still above water. My first care was to securing a good quantity of arms, ammunition, and some provisions, he wrote in a report. Why am I doing an accent?
Yeah, what the hell?
Huh?
I said, what the hell?
That was Captain Cheap.
Oh, was that who that was?
There's a lot of quotes in here, like words straight from these people's journal entries, so I don't know how else to, like, read it sometimes.
I forgive you for your weird reading.
Thank you. Okay, so he began to put together an excavation team. For this hazardous mission, he chose the gunner, John Bulkeley, though he considered him to be an argumentative sailor, a so-called sea lawyer who was always ready to insist that he knew better than his superiors. Ever since the wreck, Bulkeley seemed to carry himself with smug independence, building his own great cabin and holding forth to the other men. But, unlike Lieutenant Baines, Bulkeley was a ferocious worker, a survivor, and other members of the excavation team would perform better with him in charge. Cheap also sent along the midshipman John Byron, who had faithfully served him during the voyage, and who had helped him escape the sinking ship. As Cheap looked on, Bulkeley, Byron, and the small team set off in a boat. The welfare of the entire group was now in their hands. As they rowed alongside the fragments of the Wager, the waves thrashed them. Once their boat was fastened to the man-of-war, they slithered onto the wreckage, crawling along the caved-in deck and cracked beams, which continued to break apart even as the men were perched on top of them. As the explorers inched along the sunken ruins, they saw down in the water the corpses of their compatriots floating between the decks. One misstep and they would join them. The difficulties we had to encounter in these visits to the wreck cannot be easily described, Byron wrote. They detected some barrels amid the debris, and lassoed and transferred them to their boat. Found several casks of wine and brandy, Bulkeley noted excitedly. At one point he reached the captain's storeroom and pried open the door. got out several casks of rum and wine, and brought them ashore. Cheap soon dispatched more parties to help with the excavation. By the captain's orders, we were every day working on the wreck, except when the weather would not permit us. Midshipman Campbell wrote. All 3 boats were deployed. Cheap knew that the castaways had to salvage as much as possible before the wreck submerged entirely. They tried to bore deeper into the hull, into the flooded chambers. The seeping water pooled around them as they burrowed through layers of debris like shipworms eating through a hull. Hours of labor often turned up little of value. At last, the men broke into part of the hold, extracting 10 barrels of flour, a cask of peas, several casks of beef and pork, a container of oatmeal, and more casks of brandy and wine. They also retrieved canvas, carpentry tools, and nails, which Campbell noted in our situation were of infinite service. And there was still more, several chests of wax candles, along with bales of cloth, stockings, shoes, and several clocks. Meanwhile, the hull had further come apart,
This.
blown up, as Bulkeley put it. And as the wreckage became increasingly dangerous to climb on, with little more than a few rotted planks poking out of the sea, the men devised a new strategy. They fastened hooks to long wooden sticks and, reaching over the gunwale, tried to blindly fish out additional supplies. On shore, Cheap had erected a tent by his dwelling, which stored all the provisions. As he had on the wager, he relied on the strict hierarchy of officers and petty officers to enforce his edicts. But amid the constant threat of rebelliousness, he primarily trusted an inner circle of allies, a structure within a structure, that included the Marine Lieutenant Hamilton, the surgeon, Elliot, and the purser, Harvey. Cheap also secured all the guns and ammunition in the store tent. No one was allowed access without his permission. The captain always carried a pistol, and he authorized Hamilton, Elliot, and Harvey to do so as well. With their guns gleaming, they met the transport boats as they came ashore, making sure that everything was properly transferred to the tent and registered in the purser's accounts. There would be no thievery, another "thou shalt not" in the Articles of War. Cheap found times Bulkeley bristled at all the rules and regulations. On nights when the moon was out, the gunner sought to continue mining the wreck with his friends, but Cheap forbade it because of the risk of stealing. Bulkeley complained in his journal of Cheap and his inner circle. They were so cautious of anything being embezzled that they would not suffer the boats to go off and work by night. By this we omitted several opportunities of getting out provisions and other useful things which we shall shortly stand in great need of. Despite such tensions, after a week on the island, there was generally a new sense of purpose. To conserve rations, Cheap doled them out sparingly, with what Byron called the most frugal economy. On those fortunate days when Cheap could offer the castaways meat, a slice, ordinarily for one person, was divided among 3. Even so, this was more sustenance than the men had enjoyed since being orphaned on the island. Our stomachs are become nice and dainty, Bulkeley wrote. Periodically, Cheap was able to further cheer the group with servings of wine or brandy. Though the carpenter's mate Mitchell and his companions remained fractious, the open rebelliousness had quieted. Even the boatswain King had begun keeping his distance from them. Cheap, whose insecurities could lead to sudden eruptions, also seemed calmer, and he and his men soon received an inexplicable blessing. Their scurvy began to be cured, unbeknownst to them, by the island's wild celery.
Wow.
All this time, Cheap had expressed the great concern for the safety of the people, adding, "If it had not been for the captain, many would have perished." To Byron, the castaways were all like Robinson Crusoe, ingeniously eking out an existence. One day they discovered a new source of nourishment, a long, narrow form of seaweed, which they scraped from the rocks. When boiled in water for about 2 hours, it made what Bulkeley deemed a good and wholesome food. Other times, Byron and his companions would mix the seaweed with flour and fry it with the tallow from candles. They called the crispy concoction sloth cakes. Campbell noted, "I had the honor to sup with Cheap one night," adding, "We had a sloth cake of his making, the best I ever eat on the island." Campbell was still startled by the sight of his commander being reduced to such fare. This poor stuff even the captain was forced to content himself with. Though the castaways were desperate to hunt the black-necked cormorants and the white-chinned petrels and the other aquatic birds that perched tantalizingly on the rocks out at sea, they had no way to reach them because the boats were occupied mining the wreck. Even the men who could swim were deterred by the surf and the water temperature, which at the time of year was so often in the 40s. If they dove in anyway, they would soon suffer from hypothermia, and given their thin bodies, they could die within an hour. Some of the castaways refusing to give up the bird hunt scrounged whatever materials they could find and pieced together makeshift miniature rafts. These included, Bulkley wrote, punts, cask boats, leather boats, and the like. A 30-year-old seaman named Richard Phipps improvised a raft by cracking open a large barrel, then taking part of the wooden shell and lashing it with a rope to a pair of logs. Though a poor swimmer, he bravely set out, as Byron put it, in quest of adventures in this extraordinary and original piece of embarkation. He carried a shotgun, with Cheap's permission, and whenever he spied a bird, he steadied himself as well as he could amid the waves, held his breath, and fired. After some success, he began to venture farther along the coast, mapping out new realms. One night, he failed to return. After he didn't come back the next day as well, Byron and the rest of the castaways mourned the loss of one more companion. The following day, another seaman, undaunted, headed out on his own raft to hunt. As he approached a rocky islet, he spotted a large animal. He edged closer, gun ready. It was Phipps. His craft had been capsized by a wave, and he just managed to scramble onto the rock where he'd been stranded, shivering and hungry. The castaway of castaways. After Phipps was brought back to the encampment, he immediately began building a new, sturdier craft. This time he took an oxhide, which had been used on the Wager to sift gunpowder, and wrapped it around several bent wooden poles, forming a suitable canoe. And off he went again. Byron and two friends designed their own precarious craft, a flat-bottomed raft which they propelled with a pole. When they weren't mining the wreck, they went on excursions. Byron made a study of the seabirds that he saw, including the steamer duck, which had short wings and big webbed feet, and made a snoring sound when it cleaned its feathers at night. He considered this duck an avian equivalent of a racehorse because of the velocity with which it moved across the surface of the water.
That's
In a
beautiful.
sort of half-flying, half-running motion.
This is like what goes through my head when I see nature.
Yeah, like you just
I just
compare.
observe and, yeah, take notes. Yeah, that duck is like a racehorse.
Yeah, I mean, their DNA is probably like some
Are
sort
you-
of percentage the same.
Fudging, gosh, fudging, darn it, fudge. I keep dying at this stupid crab castle. You know what? I was thinking while you were reading that, like, I wonder, like, the whole concept of the Fountain of Youth. You gotta wonder if, like, these guys are coming off of pirate ships and they come in, they start drinking, like, cleaner water, eating fruit. All of a sudden, their scurvy goes away and they're not so gross and grotesque anymore. They probably thought that, like, they had actually discovered the Fountain of Youth just from being slightly healthier. Because they had no concept of health and eating healthy. You know?
I mean, like the pirates.
The shipmen, the seamen.
What are you talking about, Fountain of Youth? Like, did they say that?
No, I'm saying, like, you know,
I know what
Oh,
you mean, but like,
a lot of old, like, seaman tales back in the day kind of came down to, like, just misinterpretations of shit. Like the giant oarfish being a sea monster, right? Or, you know, dugongs being mermaids, right? Like, my interpretation is they thought they had found the Fountain of Youth. Meanwhile, they probably just came onto land and started eating healthy again. And
who
there's
said they found the Fountain of Youth?
well, no one in particular, but where then did the urban legend come out of? You know what I mean? Or not urban, I guess it would be old legend.
Who said that? Seaman said that?
The conquistadors.
Okay, so John Bulkeley was on a mission.
Going to ignore that?
I get what you mean, though. With the carpenter Cummins and several other stout friends, he began collecting branches. At a flat spot in the encampment, the men hammered them into an extended skeletal frame. Then they picked leaves and reeds from the forest and used them to cover the exterior with thatch, further insulating the walls with bits of camlet wool taken from the wreck. Using strips of canvas sails as curtains, they divided the space into 14 quarters, or cabins, as Bulkeley called them. And voila! They had built a dwelling, one that dwarfed the captain's. This is a rich house, and in some parts of the world would purchase a pretty estate, Bulkeley wrote. Considering where we are, we cannot desire a better habitation. Inside, wooden planks served as tables, and barrels were used as chairs. Bulkeley had private sleeping quarters, along with a place by the firelight to read his cherished book, The Christian's Pattern, or a treatise of the imitation of Jesus Christ, which he'd rescued from the ship. Providence made it the means of comforting me, he noted. He also now had a dry refuge where he could write regularly in his journal, a ritual that kept his mind alert and preserved some part of his former self from the ravaging world. Moreover, he had discovered Master Clark's logbook, which had been torn to pieces, yet another sign that someone had been determined to expunge evidence of any human errors that might have contributed to the wreck. So basically, theory is, so far, that somebody went in and tampered with these logs to cover up, like basically just to cover up, because if it's discovered somebody is responsible for a wreck or for the mission not being completed, by the time that that person gets back to the mainland, they're going to prison. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. So yeah, it's been noted that somebody tampered with the logbooks, which is weird, but okay, anyway.
Going to ignore that?
Anyway. Careful. Okay. Bulkeley vowed to be exceedingly careful in writing each day's transaction in order to ensure a faithful relation of facts. Other castaways, meanwhile, were constructing their own irregular habitations, as Byron called them. There were tents and lean toss and thatch-covered huts, though none as large as Bulkeley's. Perhaps out of adherence to long-standing class and social hierarchies, or perhaps simply from a desire for familiar order, the men segregated on the island much the way they had on the ship. Sheep now had his shelter to himself, where he ate with his closest allies, and where he was attended to by his steward, Plastow. Bulkeley, for his part, shared his house largely with Cummins and other warrant officers. Byron lived in his shelter with his fellow midshipmen, crowded together with Cousins, Campbell, and Isaac Morris, as if they were back in the oaken vault on the waiter's orlop deck. The captain of the Marines, Robert Pemberton, occupied a habitation next to the tents of the other army forces, and the seamen, including John Jones and John Duck, broke off into their own communal shelters. The carpenters, Mitchell and his band of desperados, also stuck together. The area no longer resembled a campsite. It formed, Byron noted, a kind of village, with a street running through it. Bulkeley wrote proudly, "Observing our new town, we find there are no less than 18 houses in it." There were other signs of transformation. In one tent, the group had set up a makeshift hospital, where the ailing could be looked after by the surgeon and his mate. To collect drinking water, they caught rain with empty barrels. Some of the survivors cut strips of cloth, salvaged from the wager, and stitched them into their loose garments. Fires burned constantly, not only for warmth and cooking, but also for the slim possibility that the smoke might be detected by a passing ship. And the wager's bell, that had been washed ashore, was rung the way it had been on the ship to signal a meal or a gathering. That's so fucking cool. They actually pulled it together. At night, some men would sit around a blaze, listening to the old salts spin their yarns of the world that once was. John Jones confessed that when he had confidently beseeched the crew to save the wager before it struck, he'd never thought that any of them would actually survive. Perhaps they were proof of a miracle. Others read the few books that they had salvaged. Captain Cheap had a battered copy of Sir John Narborough's account of his British expedition to Patagonia between 1669 and 1671, and Byron borrowed it, escaping into an adventure still rife with hope and excitement. The castaways gave names to the places around them, making them their own. They christened the body of water in front of their beach Cheap's Bay, the summit overlooking their village. The one that Byron had climbed was dubbed Mount Misery, and the largest mountain later became known as Mount Anson, and they named their new home after the old one, Wager Island.
That is flipping cool.
Alright, I'm gonna take a break for a minute. Rest my voice.
This does sound like a very cool story. I like survival stories, so this kind of appeals to
All
me.
of this really happened too.
Yeah.
Like, and they're so specific. But the oh my god, the conditions, I mean, just so bleak. I mean, like living hell, really. These people went through living hell.
Oh my god. Take a hard thing. Why there's so many crabs? Oh my god, use the thing. Jesus Christ, what's happening? Whew. That was a close one. But I made it out all right. Where am I right now? Where am I? I'm playing a lot of nautical games, so I'm taking a lot of damage. I'm not doing a good enough job dodging and blocking. How far did you get in Dave the Diver? I'm just curious.
Like, not far. I probably played like maybe 16 hours or something like that.
I mean, that's pretty far. 16 hours?
I
Like,
don't
what
know.
part of the story, like, what progression did you get up to? Did you get to the farm?
Farm, no.
Yeah, I just unlocked the rice paddies.
No, I didn't. No. Didn't get that far further than me.
Yeah. I'm shocked by how, like, more in-depth it continues to get. Like, yeah, it's just very well made. But it's so true, you just lose so much time to it. It's way too easy to get caught up in that game. Sign of a good game. Sign of a well-made game. Oh, there's a... what's it called? Place above there. Am I able to reach that? I don't think so. Oh, this is like the tutorial area. How did I end up here? Oh, brother. Tell me about your outdoors time today, Terra Girl.
It was good. I just took my Kindle out there.
Were you reading The Wager?
No, I finished another book called Dopamine Nation, which is
Oh,
very
yes.
educational.
I remember you telling me about this one.
And then I continued reading a historical romance like a Bridgerton type, which I read a little bit of that, and then I went inside, and then yeah. And I've been thinking about like this new job opportunity.
As you would be.
Yeah. And it's making me super anxious, to be honest.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Well, speak your mind, girly.
My only thing is I don't want to trade one stressful job for like an even more stressful one, even if it does pay more. You know,
I
like
get
that's
you.
I don't want to be stuck.
I think that's everyone's fear, at least slightly. Is, you know, it's the fake, the guise of the grass being greener. But listen, it's a stress everyone kind of goes with, but it's, listen, no matter what, like, you have to kind of weigh, like, what do you have to lose? One shitty job for another shitty job that you probably can replace anyway. You know, nothing's permanent, no matter what. The only thing is, you know, there are measurable differences that are immediately better if you get this job, so, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I just like I don't want to part of me is like, do I really want to do this kind of work? I mean, it's kind of the same thing I've been doing. Except the stakes are higher.
You think so?
Yes, because these people are paying thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars out of pocket. So I have to make sure. And yeah, so yeah, basically I just have to like cater to rich people.
True, but you're not the one doing the surgery, you're just doing the scheduling and maybe a bit in the selling.
Yeah.
So, how much do you, like, how much of the onus is on your hands? Look at that guy, that's a bit scary.
But it's just like, does it really align with what just me in general?
Oh god.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's plastic surgery. Cosmetic surgery. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm all for that, you know, if that's what you want to do. It's just its own specialty. But damn, like, I don't know. I don't know, dude. I'm having doubts now. I'm having second thoughts.
I get you, girly.
It terrifies me. Like, honestly, it terrifies me because going from. So, here's what. With bariatrics, I suffered a year of horribleness for an entire fucking year. And I persevered and I got through that. And then I had a pretty okay year after that. Oh, God. It always does that when I'm talking about something serious. I'm gonna sue Apple for emotional harm.
You should. I was on a call with my mother, and she was dying, and to give me the balloons.
But I'm just thinking like this the piece that I'm getting from all of this is just being able to leave my current job. Like that's what I'm excited about.
Right. I think and that's what you should be excited about.
But it shouldn't be like that. I should be excited for the new position, not absolutely terrified. Right? I just really don't like I don't know. I really worst case scenario is just like going in there and hating it and just being like why did I fucking do this, you know, just so I can escape one job only to get trapped by another one that I don't like. I'm it fucking terrifies me.
I get you, girly.
So I'm not gonna say yes like when I
Immediately.
go on Tuesday.
Like, period? Like, you're gonna reject the offer?
I don't know. No, I might tell her like, let me think about it, and then I will get back to you.
Okay. I think that's sensible, girly. Honestly. Another crab. The size of a crab knows no upper or lower bounds. Revives you upon death at the cost of a stowaway.
But I'll tell you what, like, you know, this was a wonderful opportunity, but is it really for me? Like, am I really okay with going to another office and having to learn all of this stuff all over again when it's not even what I want to do with my fucking life, right?
Right.
This is not what I want to do. I want to go back to school and I actually want to study like a science, you know? And I
Right.
still want to do my book, um, you know, fucking publishing thing. And I was gonna pick that back up in July. It would be exactly a year from the day that I first started it a year ago. And then I had to take a pause 6 months ago. Um, so yeah, um, but still it doesn't mean that I can't find another job. Like I need to escape the hospital and find something else.
Oh, God.
Because just the sheer idea of not having to work at the hospital again, brought me a lot of peace this weekend. But the prospect of getting the job at Dr. Rao's place, that to me is like, it's really starting to fucking freak me out and terrify me, and I might say no. Just cause, and then I'm like, am I saying no for the right reasons, you know, is it, cause obviously there's always gonna be anxiety with a new job, but like, my anxiety is stemming from, like, experience in this particular field. And yes, it would be a step up, but is this what I want to do with my fucking life? And do I even want to waste the surgeon's time? Like, what if I just show up and I'm only there for 6 months and she's like, oh great, here we got, like, I have to find another person and train them all over again. Like, this fucking sucks.
My sister said something to me once about that where it's like, I felt the same way. Like, you know, you always try to have, like, humanity for the people that you work for, but at the same time, like, you're just as easily replaceable no matter what. Like it's the 2 weeks rule. Yeah, it's a courtesy thing. At the same time, like, who gives? Like, if they have to train someone, that's on them. They're making oh, I just died. They're making a risk just as much as you are. So it's something that's calculated for them, and they're also, like, basically, like, millionaires. So like, I remember I felt bad about the camp, like, leaving them, and I'm like, oh my god, these people make millions of dollars.
I know it's just awkward.
Yeah.
It's just awkward.
Yeah. I get you. I get you, girlie.
I just don't think this is what I want to do. And if I am gonna if I am gonna leave this job, like, at least I can go in knowing, like, I don't have to learn anything.
Yeah.
You know, if I have to deal with these people. You know. But here's the thing, like, I've revised my resume now, and I can actually start looking elsewhere, but making sure, you know.
Oh my god. Yeah.
Actually genuinely looking other places. But yeah, it fucking scares me. Like, I am now in the phase of, like, okay, now I'm having a fuck ton of anxiety around this. And I'm not feeling confident about going over there.
It's normal to have it.
Stress. It would be very high stress for me, and I know it. Like, do I want to go through that again? Do I want to deal with a high stress job? Like, it doesn't fucking align with me, okay? And I talked to Brad about this.
Do you know it would be high stress? You're confident it would be a high stress environment?
Yes, I'm confident.
More so than the one you're already in?
Yes. Because not only would it entail what I do already now with scheduling and checking people in and checking people out and all that stuff, but add on to that with sales, and then add on to that with marketing. Like, it would be a lot more.
But didn't you say that there's a lot less clients to work with in a situation like this? Like, you're working with a lot? No?
No. I mean, it's relative, you know, like, urology, we are fully staffed We have a lot of staff to compensate with the volume of patients. If it's just me and one surgeon, what the fuck does that look like? The ratio is not the same. Like, that question is not, it's not really the right question, is it? Anyways, I'll talk to my parents about it tomorrow. And then, I'll see how I feel about it. It just happens so fast. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't want to make any rash decisions. And I think I was just so sold on the just escaping urology that, like, anything looked better. Anything looks better. And, like, while I know I'm capable of doing this position, what it comes down to now that I'm seeing both sides of the coin is will I be happy? Like, really, truly, humbly, can I say that? Will I be happy? When I wasn't wasn't happy at bariatrics. If it weren't for Lexi and Kaylee, I wouldn't have liked it. Really, when it boils down to. And then urology too. I'm not into it. I'm not into this. And I told Brad too, I was like, I think I just need to get out of healthcare. Like, I need to get out of healthcare just entirely. It's not for me. So I just don't want to trap myself again.
But you're never trapped, girly.
It feels like that sometimes, though.
Yeah.
Like, I feel trapped right now. In my current job. Because they're a big organization and they have benefits, and the longer you're with them, the better your benefits are. And you have a 401k and all this stuff, you know, like, it's good. The benefits are great. And so, yeah, it is a fucking trap.
Well,
And then I tell them, you know. Anyways, it's. I know what you're saying, but it feels like I'm like stuck. I wouldn't say I'm trapped, but it feels like I'm stuck. And it's really hard to unwedge myself.
yeah.
So I don't know. I'm having, like, second guessing myself and doubting the whole fucking thing. And I think I just had, like, rose-colored lenses on, and I just need to meditate and really evaluate, like, what do I want? What do I need? As Tara, what do I need? I think, and I don't think, I'm not sure I will be happy there. I need to get a job at a spa or something. Just kidding. No, but something a lot more slower paced. Like, I would love to work at like fucking public library or something. I don't know.
Why don't you try?
Because all of the library positions, when I've checked, they're all, you have to be like, you have to have like a PhD.
Really?
To be a librarian, you have to have like a certain degree.
This is fucked up. This world is so stupid. Oh my god, I'm gonna fucking die! Sorry. That was so close.
So all the county jobs, like, first of all, I don't know, they have a description on the website, but like, I don't fucking... When I'm reading it, I'm like, what the fuck even is this? And like, a lot of the positions, they just are not really for me. A lot of it is like physical labor. Or like, like stuff you need a bachelor's in something. You know, you have to have a very specific type of degree. But, you know, I just have to...
It's so crazy to me about the librarian thing, because it's like... I mean, I guess there's not a lack of librarians. I don't know. I guess I really don't know.
Well, you don't know what the duties of a librarian actually is. Well, librarians actually have to coordinate like events and stuff like that too. It's not just like sitting behind a desk and
No, I know that.
check out. Like, no.
They're like community managers almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, so they well, never mind. Too caught up on the PhD part. Is there anything else that you would think? I mean, just as a brainstorming thing.
Yeah. I don't know. Do you have any ideas?
Like for you?
Yeah. Obviously, I don't want to do a step down and work at fucking Barnes and Noble.
No.
Because I clearly have
That's retail.
experience.
It's retail. No, we don't want you working retail. I mean, really any... Every place needs receptionist duties. Every place. It really is just a matter of like how corporate do you want to get, like, you know. But like surely not all of them could be that bad. I mean, it has to be better than healthcare in some way or form.
I want to work in a museum.
No, that one I could see you needing a PhD for. Shit. That would be really cool, though. What kind of museum?
I don't know.
Well, I can see you doing that.
What would I do? It's either that or I work at the um the airport or something.
I mean, that's certainly a thought.
I like the airport. But Sarasota Bradenton International Airport is so small. It's small. It's not super dinky, but it's small. It's only got one terminal.
That's it. Being anything there seems like pretty stressful to me, though. Like, I feel like that would be worse than a receptionist at a plastic surgery place, to be honest with you. Because where are people they're most, like, surly and annoying? Like, while traveling.
True, yeah, I don't want to have to deal with people. If I don't have to deal with people, then I'll be fine. At least just like minimal amount of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're right, girlie, and when you're right, you're right.
I just need something so, you know, oh fucking
God.
even a job that does ooh, you know what?
What?
I forgot about those 12-hour shifts at the hospital.
What about him?
There's a position. Ooh, but it's in the ER. No, never mind. There are positions in the ER that that they're like 12-hour shifts, 3 days a week. So you get 4 days off a week.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That'd be nice for you. Do you...
But it's ER.
Yeah. My sister did it for a while.
I can't be around sick people. I can hardly be around the sick people at our clinic, and it makes me squeamish.
You can hardly be around the pee sick people. The gross, disgusting urine.
Mostly like vomit. That's where I like draw the line. I'm like, I can't. Blood I'm fine with for the most part. It's really just vomit. Emesis is what they call it. But I'm like, fuck that. Fuck that shit. No.
Emesis?
Yeah, it's like the clinical term for vomiting.
I didn't realize there's a... I mean, I guess that makes sense. It's clinical term.
Yeah, that's what the doctor writes on his report. Like, patient had emesis or some shit like that, and we called an ambulance for patient due to blah 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 emesis and blah blah blah. And then that guy died literally that day. I swear to God.
Oh my God. What happened?
He had heart failure.
That's just too bad.
And that's why I don't want to work in healthcare. I think I rest my case.
What just happened? I just got knocked so far away. The game just put me in a reset position. Hold on, I'm just freaking out. Why don't I save this game? How do you feel about finishing the night listening to some booty?
Sure.
Okay, let me just get back to that shell place. What even happened? Oh my god, I'm getting fudged up. I'm just trying to run at this point. All the enemies respawned for some reason. Okay, there's the save spot. Yeah, literally something happened where the game just went nope, and then just like kicked me back. Perfect, now I could save. I guess. Nice.
That or Andrew, I think I'm gonna go online and look at different postings around Sarasota just because I just feel terrible right now about the whole thing.
Okay. Okay, girly.
Gotta figure this out.